car number 3, that's Neil Allen, the Ford Mustang, getting away. Let's watch the body sway as they come round this U-turn at the causeway, and there's Gagan going through, and Egan Gagan has hit the front. Ian
doesn't seem to be handling as good as Allen's car. There's Jane with a wow, he's really had the tail out that time.
They would lean and push and shove and bump each other all the time, you know, and really that was great motor racing, wasn't it? Like, people watched it, and you see some old footage of it now, and those 4 or 5 guys, they used to just bash into each other, and like, I suppose it's sad you don't see it happen these days, because these days everyone's sort of, you know, we've got the driver safety guy there watching and penalising and stop-go penalties. There was none of ever that back in those days. Everyone sort of just did their own thing. And how many times you see a car come back with a mudguard all bended in and the front pushed in, particularly Moffat's car or something, that's the way they drove.
And there's Beachy wide and Gagan slips inside him, and away he goes in second place.
Some of those races where they didn't count for anything other than a trophy and a $10 cheque, these guys would go out there and just drive the pants off themselves and off everybody else on the track. The cars were just driven so hard, and it was just because it was fun.
These things get out of shape and look like they're doing something, where the modern cars, F1, V8 supercar, just go around on rails, and it's sort of, there's no excitement. Like, this car was sideways more than it was straight when it was racing. I don't know about now, but in the old days it was sort of, and I didn't even know it from where I was in the pits, but I'd see photos later with the car all sideways, the smoke pouring off the tyres, and oh yeah. But it was just, it was a very flamboyant era, where now it's more controlled, you know.
One of the nice things about that era was that tyres let the vehicles move about. Today, you can't slide tyres very much. They just won't let you do it. So that's why they look like slot cars. But in those days, you know, a good big opposite lock slide, and Pete Gagan, Beachy with a foot propped up against somewhere, trying not to roll around in a seat and all the rest of it, you know, and you had spectacle because you could see that the car was being driven crazily hard and that the driver was having a ball, and the driver was sensational to watch.
In Australian motorsport, a revolution began in the mid-60s. It was later to become known as the start of the muscle car era, and nothing embodied it better than the Ford Mustang. Early in 1964, Ford had launched the Mustang in the United States aimed at the youth market. It was to become the most successful product launch in automotive history. Instead of an expected 75,000 sales in year 1, Ford sold nearly 700,000.
It was just a fantastic culmination of brilliant market research and engineering, because they figured that the post-war years, you know, by the mid-1960s, there'd be a whole lot of young Americans getting into their late teens, early 20s, wanting a personal coupe, a respectable sports car. And Ford built that car for the masses. So purely in a marketing sense, in terms of a hugely popular selling road car, the Mustang was a success. But what people found, that the basic engineering of the car was so good that success translated to the racetrack as well. So it's not only a very visually appealing car, it's got this fantastic heritage from both America and Australia.
It just had that look, and then when you combine that with people like Pete Gagan and Norm Beachy and so on, who could drive the socks off them and make them look spectacular, you know, picking up front wheels and everything, what more do you need, in a sense?
The Mustang made a big impact on the world of cars. I mean, it was an amazing story for Ford. It was like inventing the wheel again, because it was the best seller in America. It just caught the imagination of people, particularly young people.
In Australia, champion driver Norm Beachy always wanted to stay ahead of the pack with his choice in cars. Felt changes in touring car regulations meant the new Mustang would be ideal for the local scene. In January 1965, he unveiled his new American muscle car at Calder.
Norm Beachy was, of course, made the Mustang's debut in Australian motorsport. It was early in 1965. There has been some debate. He has carried I guess, the prestige of being the first man to win in a Mustang anywhere in the world. But since I've heard those statistics, a few people have tried to argue the point. But we'll say arguably the first time a Ford Mustang won. It was a fantastic success for Norm. And it certainly sort of raised the bar so high. Here was this new car. It was phenomenal. It was light, it was powerful, it handled well, and it just set a whole new benchmark for everyone else to follow.
Beechey's main rivals at that time were Bob Jane and Big Pete Gagan, and they were not going to be left behind. If you can't beat them, join them.
Ian Gagan and myself, we decided to go on this trip. We went to California, went to Carroll Shelby's workshop where they were building the Cobras, and Carroll Shelby was a mate of mine at the time, and Ian and I went to their factory where they were making these Shelbys, and we just collected all the parts we wanted from the assembly line to make our cars. And of course we ordered the cars while we were there.
What else could they do? The Mustang, as I said, it's just set a new benchmark. And Pete Gagan was racing a Ford Cortina. Bob Jane had been previously racing Jaguars. This car came along and just, blew them all out of the water. So if you can't beat them, join them. So Bob Jane and Pete Gagan headed over to the US to get some Mustangs for themselves.
It was the time when a car could make you a winner, and then everybody jumped onto it. It was Jaguar originally, and then there was the move to the American cars, firstly the Mustang, then others were to follow. And it was great times because it was an innovative time where you looked around and you thought, what can do the job? Where can I get engine bits and all the rest of it, And of course, later we saw the Mustang, an attempt to supplant the Mustang with our own local Super Falcon, which worked for one driver but not for another.
The way the story goes, Bob was very keen to get his car back to Australia as quickly as he could and to get it on the track as quickly as he could. So I think he air freighted his car back, put it together very quickly and ran it in that 1965 Australian Touring Car Championship race at Sandown. Pete's car still hadn't arrived back. That didn't arrive till after that meeting. And then, of course, that gave his mechanic, John Shepherd, plenty of time to really take his time and build that car into a really fantastic car. And it was a winner from the moment it hit the track.
And so in 1965, with Gagan's car still being built, just 2 Mustangs lined up with the field in the Australian Touring Car Championship at Sandown. Bob Jane was on pole with Norm Beechey back in 13th place after suffering mechanical problems. For 40 laps, Jane led until his new car succumbed to overheating. Beechey, who had worked his way back up to second, took over, and setting new lap records as he went, won by a full lap. It was the beginning of the dominance of the Mustang in Australia.
Norm Beechey may have been the first driver in Australia to race a Ford Mustang, but it was Pete Gagan's record-breaking success in this 1965 model that really established Ford's new pony car as something special. It was powered by a 400 brake horsepower, 289 cubic inch V8 engine prepared under the meticulous guidance of John Shepherd, using a lot of hot race parts from US racing legend Carroll Shelby. Now with the sublime driving talents of Pete Gagan at the wheel, this car wrote its own special page in history. It won the 1966 Australian Touring Car Championship and numerous state titles on its way to an incredible 68 race wins from 74 starts, a record that still stands in the Guinness Book of Records.